Some cars were built to rule racetracks, others to flood showrooms, but a rare few were crafted with obsession, not permission. Imagine a garage bathed in shadows, chrome glowing under a single bulb. Inside, cars with wine-cooling vents, gold-lined engines, and leather from altitude-raised cows. These weren't just machines, they were indulgent masterpieces. Born from visionaries like GordonMurray and Carroll Shelby, they defied logic and redefined excess. This isn't just a list. It's a tribute to overbuilt legends. Welcome to Regal Rides, where engineering became obsession, and obsession became art. Number 10. Mercedes-Benz W140 S-Class, 1991 to 1998. The billion-dollar obsession. Fade in. Stuttgart, 1981. A cold morning. Inside a glass-walled design studio, Mercedes engineers stare at a whiteboard bearing a single command: build the best car in the world, cost is no object. The result wasn't just a car. It was a billion-dollar masterpiece of mechanical obsession, the W140 S-Class. On the outside it looked stately, even understated, but beneath the skin, it was a fortress of refinement. Double-pane windows muted the world, vacuum-assisted doors whispered shut, even the windshield washer nozzles were heated, for winter had no business touching a Mercedes. Inside, over 100 electric motors adjusted everything from the mirrors to the trunk lid. A tiny parking periscope rose from the rear fender. Every inch was engineered not for convenience but for absolute control. It rode like a cloud wrapped in armor. Its wheelbase outstretched American pickups. Its clientele, presidents, billionaires, and men with bodyguards. And yet it nearly bankrupted Daimler. It was too heavy, too complex, too expensive. But decades later, its doors still close with that perfect thunk, a sound that says, this was the last time Mercedes built a car without asking what it would cost, only what it deserved. Number 9. Volkswagen Phaeton, W12, 2002 to 2016. The billionaire's anonymous ride. What happens when a mad genius tells engineers to forget the brand and chase perfection? In the early 2000s, Ferdinand Piëch, the powerful head of VW and grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, issued a challenge. Build a car that can cruise at 186 mph all day, in 120 ft/h, with the cabin held steady at 72 ft. The result? The Volkswagen Phaeton W12, a 5,000-pound German masterpiece wrapped in a VW badge. Beneath its modest exterior lay a 6.0-liter W12 engine, adaptive air suspension, double-pane glass, auto-closing vents, and an interior lined in bullhide leather, sourced from cows raised at high altitudes to avoid mosquito bites. Each Phaeton was hand-built in VW's transparent glass factory in Dresden, a sterile architectural marvel where even the floor sparkled like a surgical suite. And yet, almost no one bought one. Why? Because it wore the wrong badge. In the eyes of buyers, a $100,000 VW made no sense. Even though under the skin it shared DNA with Bentley's Continental GT, it was a ghost, silent, smooth, effortless, and invisible to the crowd. The Phaeton proved that when you overbuild without overbranding, you create a car only true automotive connoisseurs will understand. Number 8. Citroen SM, 1970 to 1975. France's futuristic fever dream. Picture this, a luxury coupe with spaceship styling, Maserati DNA, and technology so far ahead of its time, it still feels futuristic today. This was the Citroen SM, a vehicle that defied every convention and proudly wore its weirdness like a Medal of Honor. Born from Citroen's obsession with comfort and radical design, the SM looked like it had landed from another galaxy. Underneath its long, slippery body sat a hydro-pneumatic suspension system that could raise or lower the car at will. Roads felt irrelevant, it floated over them, smoothing out bumps with a hiss of compressed nitrogen and hydraulic magic. But that was just the beginning. The steering was speed-sensitive and returned to center automatically, like a psychic connection between man and machine. The headlights turned with the wheels, illuminating corners before you reached them, something modern cars only reintroduced decades later. Power came from a Maserati 5.6, giving the SM Italian soul wrapped in French flair. It wasn't fast by today's standards, but it moved with elegance. Driving it felt like commanding a lounge chair on a cloud, while wearing a silk scarf. It was fragile, expensive, impossible to maintain, but it was also one of the most daring cars ever made. It asked not what do drivers need, but what do dreamers want, and that made it unforgettable. Number 7. BMW Z1, 1989 to 1991. The concept car that escaped the lab. Imagine a car so experimental, so radical, that it felt like someone accidentally let a concept car escape from BMW's secret design lab. That was the BMW Z1, a low-volume roadster that defied expectations at every turn. It wasn't built for profit, it was built to prove what was possible. Let's start with the party trick, the disappearing doors. Instead of swinging open, they retracted vertically into the car's body, sliding into the sills like magic. You could drive with the doors completely lowered, wind swirling at your hips. It was wild, unnecessary, brilliant. Then came the thermoplastic body panels, which could be unscrewed and replaced with basic tools. Want a new color? Just swap the panels, no paint booth required. Even the undercarriage was flat, shaped for optimal aerodynamics, a nod to motorsport engineering. Under the skin, the Z1 shared parts with the more conservative BMW 3 Series. But that's where the similarities ended. The Z1 featured specially tuned suspension, advanced chassis rigidity, and a sense of driving purity that only a lightweight, low-slung roadster can deliver. Only 8,000 units were ever made, most of them sold in Europe. BMW didn't even try to market it globally. Why? Because the Z1 was never about the numbers. It was about pushing boundaries. Today, it stands as a symbol of when BMW let its engineers go rogue, and the result was a rolling piece of sci-fi sculpture. Number 6. Lexus LFA 2010 to 2012. The V10 symphony that cost a fortune and made none. Some cars shout, some cars roar, but the Lexus LFA, it sang, in a voice so pure, so electrifying, that it gave even Ferrari engineers goosebumps. This wasn't just a Japanese supercar, it was a carbon fiber love letter to mechanical perfection, and it very nearly broke Toyota. Developing the LFA took over 10 years, not because they couldn't figure it out, but because they refused to compromise. Lexus originally planned to make it from aluminum. Halfway through, they scrapped everything and switched to carbon fiber reinforced polymer. Why? Because aluminum wasn't good enough, and no supplier could match their standards, so Toyota built their own carbon loom from scratch. Under the hood purred a 4.8-liter V10 that revved so fast from idle to redline in 0.6 seconds that an analog tachometer couldn't keep up. Lexus had to develop a digital gauge cluster just to track how quickly it screamed to 9,000 RPM. The engine's sound wasn't left to chance. Lexus worked with Yamaha's musical instrument division to tune the exhaust. The result? A wail that echoed like an F1 car, equal parts aggression and opera. Only 500 units were ever built, each one essentially handcrafted. Lexus sold them at a massive loss, but they didn't care. The LFA wasn't built to sell, it was built to exist. As a testament to Japanese precision, to obsessive craftsmanship, and to the idea that sometimes profit means nothing compared to legacy. It didn't just redefine Lexus, it reminded the world that when passion fuels engineering, magic happens. Number 5. Bugatti EB11, 1991 to 1995, the billionaire's overbuilt obsession that time forgot. Before the world bowed to the Bugatti Veyron, there was a car that nearly bankrupted a dream, yet left behind a legend. The Bugatti EB11 was born from ambition, pride, and an almost reckless obsession with engineering perfection. And though history nearly buried it, true car lovers never forgot. In the late 1980s, Italian entrepreneur Romano Artioli revived the Bugatti name, determined to return it to its pre-war glory. He didn't just want a fast car, he wanted the most technologically advanced supercar ever built, and he nearly succeeded. The EB11 was stuffed with over 200 sensors. The Bugatti EB11 was born from ambition, pride, and an almost reckless obsession with engineering perfection. And though history nearly buried it, true car lovers never forgot. In the late 1980s, Italian entrepreneur Romano Artioli revived the Bugatti name, determined to return it to its pre-war glory. He didn't just want a fast car, he wanted the most technologically advanced supercar ever built, and he nearly succeeded. The EB11 was stuffed with over 200 sensors, had a quad-turbocharged 3.5-liter V12, and featured a carbon fiber monocoque chassis, something unheard of at the time. It launched from 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds, putting it in rarefied company. But it wasn't just fast, it was overbuilt in the most glorious way. All-wheel drive, active aerodynamics, scissor doors, aerospace-grade materials, and Italian leather stitched with obsessive precision. Everything from the suspension geometry to the intake system was designed with brutal performance and opulence in mind. Unfortunately, Artioli's dream collided with harsh economic realities. A global recession, sky-high development costs, and poor timing led to Bugatti's second downfall. Number 4. McLaren F1, 1992 to 1998, the gold-line supercar built by a perfectionist. In an era when supercars were loud, wild, and borderline unhinged, the McLaren F1 arrived like a precision-engineered alien spacecraft. Designed by GordonMurray, is the man who would later help reinvent F1 racing with Mercedes. The F1 wasn't just a fast car, it was a statement, a rejection of compromise, an ode to engineering purity. From day one, Murray had one rule: no gimmicks, no fluff, just perfection. Every inch of the car was painstakingly optimized. No turbochargers, no all-wheel drive, just a naturally aspirated 6.1-liter BMW V12, tuned to 618 horsepower and mated to a 6-speed manual. And just to be sure it handled the heat, they lined the entire engine bay with real gold foil, not for show, but because gold is the best heat reflector known to man. The F1 featured a central driving position, with the steering wheel flanked by 2 passenger seats. Why? Because it offered perfect weight distribution and driver visibility. Every part of the car served a purpose. Even the air conditioning system was tested to ensure it didn't rob horsepower. And the weight? Just 2,500 pounds thanks to a carbon fiber tub, magnesium wheels, titanium bolts, and Kevlar fuel tanks. It could hit 240 mph, making it the fastest production car on Earth at the time. But it wasn't just about speed. The F1 was surgically precise, rewarding drivers with scalpel-sharp handling and a level of mechanical feedback that modern cars could only dream of. Only 106 units were ever built, and today, they fetch well over $20 million at auction. But even at that price, no amount of money can replicate the car's soul. The McLaren F1 is not just overbuilt, it's over-engineered brilliance, distilled into carbon and gasoline. This wasn't a car built for the world, it was built for the ideal world that GordonMurray imagined. Number 3. Mercedes-Benz G-Class, 1979 Tristunt, the tank in a tailored suit. Before it became a status symbol in Beverly Hills, the Mercedes-Benz G-Class was something else entirely, a military brute, forged not in fashion but in function. Conceived in the 1970s at the request of the Shah of Iran, who was a major Mercedes shareholder at the time, the G-Wagon was built to tackle the world's worst terrain and look good doing it. The original G-Class didn't have curves, it had commanding edges, like it was carved from granite. It featured triple locking differentials, something you still won't find on most SUVs today. The body was hand-welded, panel by panel, and mounted to a ladder frame designed to survive mine blasts, war zones, and anything nature could throw at it. Even in civilian form, Mercedes refused to soften its purpose. Early G-Wagons had manual gearboxes, crank windows, and hose-out interiors, not to mention bulletproof diesel engines that ran like tractors and refused to die. But over time, they added polish, leather, wood, and eventually, a twin-turbo V8 that could drag race sports cars. Yet underneath the chrome and quilted leather, it was still the same overbuilt machine, one that soldiers, explorers, and royalty all trusted. It climbed mountains, forded rivers, and traversed war-torn deserts with the same poise it now uses to navigate Rodeo Drive. And in a world where most off-roaders became soft-roaders, the G-Wagon never betrayed its roots. Even the modern AMG versions retain 3 mechanical diff locks, a body-on-frame design, and military-grade durability. The G-Class isn't just over-engineered, it's over-prepared. Built like it's expecting a global catastrophe, but polished enough to valet at a gala. It's the rare case where form followed function, and somehow became an icon anyway. Number 2. Toyota Century, 1967 to 1997, Japan's untouchable overbuilt masterpiece. While the rest of the world chased horsepower, chrome and flash, Japan built something entirely different. The Toyota Century wasn't made to be loud. It wasn't made to impress crowds. It was built quietly, obsessively for emperors, prime ministers, and industrial royalty. And it might just be the most over-engineered luxury car ever made that most people have never heard of. First introduced in 1967, the Century was Toyota's answer to the Rolls-Royce Phantom, but with Japanese restraint and near-monastic craftsmanship. For 3 decades, the Century changed so little that each model year looked nearly identical. Why? Because perfection doesn't need revision. Under the hood sat the Toyota 5VEU, a 4.0-liter Hemi-head V8, which was hand-assembled by master engineers known as Takumi. But it wasn't about power, it was about smoothness, silence, and seamlessness. Even the closing of the doors had to sound like a whispered apology. The body, painted and polished by hand. The wool interior, chosen over leather for its superior sound deadening and softness. The rear seats, reclining with massage functions in the 90s. Rear passengers controlled audio, climate, and even had lace antimacassars to keep the headrests pristine. The suspension, tuned for cloud-like glide, using a mix of air and hydraulic dampening that absorbed imperfections like they never existed. And every detail, from door hinges to switchgear, was designed with excessive durability and near-zero tolerance machining. And perhaps the most overbuilt fact, Toyota refused to mass-produce it. Every Century was built in a dedicated facility by craftsmen, with many components hand-fitted and bench-tested for weeks before approval. Production numbers were low, not because of exclusivity, but because it took time to make something this perfect. To this day, early Toyota Centuries are revered, not for flamboyance, but for their silent excellence. They're the cars of power in Japan, not the flashy CEOs, but the real decision-makers. And that kind of understated, over-engineered confidence? That's the kind of legend that never needs to shout. Number 1. Bugatti Veyron. The $2.25 billion science experiment on wheels. There are fast cars, then there's the Bugatti Veyron. A car so outrageously complex, so recklessly over-engineered, it defied the laws of physics, economics, and common sense. It wasn't just a hypercar, it was a $2.25 billion moonshot. And Volkswagen knew they'd lose money on every single unit, and they built it anyway. Why? Because Ferdinand Piëch, Volkswagen's obsessive CEO and grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, demanded it. He wanted a car that could break every record, defy every critic, and re-establish Bugatti as the pinnacle of engineering. The brief was simple but absurd: 1,000 horsepower, 250+ mph, and luxury like a Bentley. To make it happen, Bugatti's engineers developed a W16 engine, essentially two narrow-angle V8s joined together with 4 turbochargers. It produced 1,001 horsepower, and when pushed to its top speed of 253 mph, it devoured enough air to empty a room in seconds. The car had 10 radiators just to keep itself from melting, and the tires, specially developed by Michelin, they cost over $25,000 per set and could only last 15 minutes at top speed, not because they wore out, but because they would literally disintegrate from heat. The Veyron's wheels had to be shipped to France to be remounted by Bugatti's own technicians. The gearbox? A dual-clutch 7-speed unit that cost more than a brand-new Porsche. The brakes? Carbon ceramic discs with massive calipers, and a hydraulically activated rear wing that flipped up to become an air brake under hard deceleration. And what about that top speed? To unlock the full 253 mph potential, you needed a special key, the speed key, inserted into a slot near the driver's seat. Only then would the car lower itself, close the front diffusers, and retract the rear spoiler in preparation for its transformation into a land-based jet. GordonMurray, the mastermind behind the McLaren F1, once called the Veyron completely unnecessary. But even he admitted, it is a triumph of engineering, just not one I would have signed off. Yet that's precisely the point. The Bugatti Veyron didn't exist because the world needed it. It existed because engineers dared to ask, what if we built the impossible? It's a car that still humbles even today's hypercars. And it stands at the pinnacle of overbuilt madness. A machine forged not for logic, but for legacy. Why overbuilt cars still matter? What do these machines teach us? They weren't made for profit or practicality. They were built from passion for pride, perfection, and the belief that a car could be art. From the handcrafted Toyota Century, to the gold-lined McLaren F1, to the boundary-breaking Bugatti Veyron. These weren't just cars. They were bold declarations from an era when engineers dared to dream big. They lost money, they broke rules, but they showed us what happens when you build with heart, not just logic. And in every hidden detail, every motor, hinge, and polished edge, there's a message. We built this for someone who would care, and that someone is you. If you felt that, hit like, subscribe to Regal Rides, and tell us what's your favorite overbuilt car of all time.